Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. We are less than a week away from the official launch of the game, as you could see, October 9th, and so we are getting closer and closer. Unfortunately, don't think that there is going to be a character creator thing before, but there's still always a chance, I'm not sure. We also might get a pre-download available a day or two before launch as well, so be on the lookout for that if that happens. But the purpose of this video is really to just talk about some resources that might be really helpful for you. I'm not going into like any actual guides or anything, but just resources that you can look in yourself that may help you kind of figure out what to do once the game is live and whatnot. So the first thing, which I actually didn't really know about this until I think a little bit recently, or at least it was after the beta ended, but there is a interactive map. So this interactive map basically shows you kind of where all the kind of world items are in the map, as well as I think like maybe some like NPC locations and stuff like that. So like these are the chests. Yeah, there's like these books that are collectibles. It shows again everything on the left side, the teleporters, and if there's any like hidden quests and whatnot. And it shows it for each region, right? So this is the main city you start out in, but you can go to, you know, the plains, which, you know, is the biggest map. In these cases, it shows also where some like bosses are for like the Napos and whatnot. And again, all the teleporters and everything there. And it does it for all of the regions that will be in Season 1 for global, because Season 1 does end at the Everfall Forest as far as I'm aware. They will release new regions, and they've already teased some new regions for Season 2 for China, but again, we won't have to worry about that for at least a month or two, I would say. Probably a couple of months. So this is very helpful if you just want to figure out where things are and you're looking for a specific thing. I assume you can also filter out just by clicking things on the left. And you can even hide found markers, so I would assume you can mark things as found and then, you know, it'll disappear, right? All that stuff. So all of that can be incredibly helpful for just searching for all these collectibles, and also just figuring out where things are on the map and whatnot, because sometimes when you enter a zone like the underground district, it'll be all foggy on your mini map, so it can be hard to figure out where things are. So if you want a little bit more of a shortcut, you can use these maps to kind of help figure out where the teleporters are and whatnot, or where this thing is, the engram hub, which typically gets rid of all the fog so you can see the whole map in game. So that is very useful there. The next thing, which I think is one of the most useful websites that I've seen, is the BPSR Talent Planner. This is really useful for, you know, kind of messing around with skill builds and looking into them before you actually register them in game. So you don't have to go through the hassle of doing it all in game just to figure out that, oh, something's wrong, and then you need to go back and do that. You can assemble it here first before you go and do it in the game. And it has it for every single class with every single specialization as well. So it shows the base tree on the left side, so every single class has a base tree on the left side. It's always the smallest, typically in comparison to the right one. So like for Frost Mage, it's always the same, no matter if it's Icicle spec or if it's Frostbeam spec, this left side's always the same. And so you can fill it out, and then you can move on to the right side, which is based off on your specialization. Again, in this case, is it Frostbeam or is it Icicle spec? It'll show you the two different skill trees here. And what's nice is this is a really nice button. It fills the base tree, which you always are gonna fill the base tree. So you could just click that real quick to fill that up. But then again, you can go through and you can kind of click through and build your own talent. And it keeps track of, or talent tree, sorry. It keeps track of all the points you have spent, because you do only have 70 points. So eventually, again, don't follow what I'm doing. Just, you know, assume that I have some semblance of just showing you how the point system works. But yeah, so now I'm at 50 points. And again, I can cap out at 70. Right, so now I'm capped out at 70. So if I try to do another one, it'll say I reached the talent point limit. And so what's cool is not only does this allow you to build your skill tree, or your talent tree rather, before you do it in game, you can also actually look at the descriptions of the talents here. It says it for all of the major talents, it even says it for the minor ones, and it also appears on the right side. It also highlights it. So for example, you can see the Frost Comet talent here is being highlighted by that yellow circle in the middle of the screen. And what's nice as another option is if you right click on talents, you'll highlight it in a purple circle instead. And this can be useful. I've seen people do this when they're sharing their talent builds to basically say, hey, maybe you can choose this or that type of thing, right? Like maybe if this is already selected, but there's an alternative, you could say, oh, but you could also do this instead as well. Like both of these are viable. Again, I'm not saying that's the case here. This build is, I think, not at all what you want for this, so do not follow what I have here for Icicle Spec. But this is just to demonstrate what you can do with the talent tree planner, which is very useful. And again, they have this for every single class, every single subclass or specialty. Some of the information is slightly out of date. I think it will be updated soon, most notably on EIDOS/spec. The dual awareness was changed, so I think these aren't updated to the August 28th patch notes yet because they weren't live in global CBT. So I assume when global launches, which will come with that patch, we'll probably see more updated descriptions here, as well as I think there are some repeat ones that I don't really recall where they are, but there are some descriptions I think that are like repeats that maybe aren't meant to be a repeat. But I assume all of that will be fixed. And either way, it's really useful because you can literally just copy either the link above or hit the share build button to copy, and then you can just send it to your friends or whatever to showcase the talent tree that you made, and have discussions with other people about what you may want to change or whatnot. So very useful for kind of planning out, theory crafting, all that stuff. Next up though, a more practically useful one I would argue is Hiro's multi-class overview. So you can see here Hiro's YouTube channel if you want to follow them. Very helpful Excel spreadsheet, or I guess Google Sheet spreadsheet, that basically shows you all of the shared stats, or at least the stats for each class, but also really one of the most important things for multi-classing is letting you know which classes share similar stats. So, the ones that are kind of in the stark green color are the recommended stats by the game, as you can see in the legend here. But, light green ones are also additional viable stats and will most likely be stats you will invest in at some point, especially as we start to hit gear cap or stat caps for certain things with diminishing returns and whatnot, right? So like an example is if you look at like Verdant Oracle healing flow, the both dark and light green ones include crit, haste, and mastery. And if you look at Concerto style for Beat Performer, they also use crit, haste, and mastery is still a good stat. So technically, Verdant Oracle and or healing flow or healing spec, I believe, or actually what is it called in, Lifebind spec. So this is using the translations from China and not the actual global translations yet. So this is Lifebind spec and Concerto both share very similar stats, which means that it can be easier to actually build into both. Again, technically there's a greater preference for crit for Concerto than there is for Lifebind, but you'll probably want it for either or for both anyway, so it can be really useful. And one of the most notable ones actually is that I believe the shield spec for Shield Knight uses both haste and mastery, which is the same exact recommended stats as Vanguard Wind Knight is. They both use haste and mastery. They're the exact same. I think they're the only two classes in the game that use the exact same recommended stats, as well as sharing the same gear because they're both strength gear, which means that it's a lot easier to build these two classes. So if you do want to play both a DPS as well as a tank, these two classes are arguably the easiest to multi-class in the whole entire game because of the fact that they share the same main stats. And even though there is like crit is useful for Vanguard and not as useful for Shield Knight, it's still useful for the recommended one. So again, this is just very useful, and there is a more subjective aspect on this right side here where Hiro basically gave what they thought would be high and low investment for the class, and typically tanks have the lowest investment and then healers are usually the second lowest. and then DPS are obviously going to be the highest in terms of the investment required. And this basically just talks about like the stats and gear to like really make it function at, you know, the highest level. And so DPS, you know, you want to do the most amount of damage possible, so they typically require the most amount of investment. And then another more subjective skill rating for all of the classes, and kind of what Hiro felt was maybe a little bit more difficult, maybe kind of mediocre difficulty, or maybe quite easy. There's an argument that maybe the tank shouldn't be low because tanxiety is a thing, and it, I think, is quite easy to mess up tanking sometimes, but you know, certain DPS definitely are much harder to play than others. So that I think is, you know, in some ways very useful. But the most important thing is just the stat stuff here. This is the most important thing, and can be very useful to figure out what you want to multi-class in if you do want to multi-class, because you can again use this to kind of plan out what classes you might want to play on one character. If you want to play more than one, this can be a very, very useful resource there. And there are two other resources that I would share, but they're both being updated. So if they do get updated, I'll probably put a link in the description or on the pinned comment of this video. But there is Bidoof's checklist, which was previously available during the CBT, and I did use it, and it basically gives you kind of an overview of like what to expect each day, because again, there is like time gated aspects. So it'll tell you like, oh, this is what you could get as max level for today, this is how many talent points you could get for today, this is what dungeon opens up, etc., etc. And it kind of helps you kind of tell you like what you can do in a given day, and it's a checklist, right? So you can check things off once you're done, which can be really helpful for like, you know, knowing what you're doing or knowing what you have already done. It's just a general guide to kind of help you get through the first couple weeks, which is very helpful either way. And the other thing, which is also really, really helpful, which I believe Chishiya had made, was the translation database, if you want to call it that, which was originally what kind of had all of the skill trees or the talent trees. It didn't have it like customizable like the talent planner, but it just showed what they all were. But not only that, it showed basically all the translations from the Chinese server, which obviously won't be as necessary with global launch. But more importantly, it also had other tabs in the spreadsheet for like all the Imagine descriptions. It also showed basically there are certain stats that can't appear on certain equipment, so there was a tab for that. A lot of very useful information for basically a lot of the alternative stuff. It talks about even like there's a tab for all the meals you can cook and what their stats are, or like what stats they give when you eat them and all that stuff. Very, very useful guides and whatnot there, or at least it's basically a database, right? So you can look up information there. Very, very useful. But both of those are currently being worked on. So I believe both of them are hoping to get them out either just before launch or around launch. So expect to see those two available soon with the updated versions. So I'm looking forward to those because they were really helpful for me during CBT and even before CBT, especially with the database and like just figuring out what things are. But it'll just be a very useful resource, I think, in general for everyone. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was just some stuff about for launch day, right? And one of the biggest things, because I've seen people ask it, I think even in other live streams still, of who can play in global, because it is a little bit deceptive. And this is what I mean. And by no means is this definitive, because I think a lot of this stuff can update. So for one, you can see here that this says that the release date is the 9th of October at 12 UTC. You can convert that to your time zone. I'm Eastern time zone, so it actually gives me my time zone when I go over this. It says 8 a.m. GMT -4 for me. So you can check on Steam database for Star Resonance, and it should hopefully tell you what the time is for you. It's that bottom time below the 12 UTC. That would be whatever time it is for you. So it can give you an idea of when it actually starts on that day. But more importantly, if I go to packages and I go to click on this ID, there's this thing, known restrictions. This package cannot be activated in the following countries. So if you are living in a country that is listed here, unfortunately, the game is not available for you. So you cannot play out of any of these countries. Of course, I think you actually can if you use a VPN, but I'm not going to necessarily advise that. But you do you, right? Now, what is important to notice is there are some countries that are notable that are not listed here. One of them is Australia, right? So Australia is actually not here at all, right? Because this is all alphabetized. Australia is not here, which means more likely than not, Australia is able to actually play on the global server. Again, I'm not gonna say whether the connection is necessarily going to be good or bad. There are people in North America that are playing onto the Chinese server, and they say it feels pretty fine. So I imagine that the connection quality would be pretty much similar. And I think maybe ping doesn't matter as much in this game as it is maybe for some others. So, you know, just mind that the connection may or may not be worse for you. It might be totally fine though. But yeah, so Australia, New Zealand are all available to participate in the global beta, which really means that it's not just North America, South America, and Europe, but technically, you know, Australia and New Zealand are part of, and, you know, parts of Oceania can participate. Again, there are parts that can't, right? So, you know, the Philippines can't. I think, where is it? Yeah, Indonesia can't, right? So there are parts of Southeast Asia that can't, but as you kind of get closer to Australia, those countries actually might be available to participate. As well as that, actually are a lot of African countries are not on this list either. Funnily enough, South Africa is, but there is more than just South Africa, right? Like Morocco, Northern Africa. I suppose if you're any country that isn't South Africa, that you also might be able to play. And especially if you're on like the Northwest Africa, I would imagine that you might actually get a similar quality connection as even like some European countries will get to the servers, because the global server is on the east coast of North America, as far as I'm aware. So in that regard, global is potentially actually both Europe, North America, South America, most of Africa, and even Australia and New Zealand. So actually have more people who are able to potentially play in this global server than originally thought. And again, this is potentially subject to change. They might update this list if they find countries that they actually don't want to be participating in this version. But just know that if you are not on this list, if you are living in a country that is not on this list, you are technically good to go in terms of playing this game. Again, will your connection necessarily always be as good as you want it to be? That's more up in the air, but just something to note that it is open for more countries than maybe people had originally thought. And that being said, that's about it for now. That was kind of all I wanted to talk about for this video. I hope you all enjoyed kind of the wait so far. And again, hopefully we'll still maybe get a character creation. It's in the Discord. I know it's in the Discord. They've mentioned it. In fact, let me see if I can find it. I'm pretty sure it's in their FAQ. Yeah, let me switch to this thing. It's right there. It literally says, will there be a character creator before launch? It's very likely, but we haven't seen it yet. We'll see. Also notably, because I had this up here as well, the database Discord is partnering with another community, I believe, named Maxroll, and they do plan to make a lot of comprehensive guides and class builds. To me, this is kind of like if you played Final Fantasy XIV, and there's the Balance website. I know some people use Icy Veins as well, but the Balance was a really good website to look up like best in slot gear and also like guides on how to play certain classes and stuff like that. So it looks like that is also going to be under its way. So this could also be a very valuable resource in the future. So again, this is talked about in the Blue Protocol database Discord server and whatnot there. So definitely quite a few things to look forward to. And again, we are less than a week away. You can wishlist it on Steam, or, you know, if you want to play it on iOS or Google Play, if you have Android, all of that, you can do that, or even the Epic Game Store. All of that is available for you. So again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully I'll see you in game soon. Thanks for watching.